Hi, this is Svetlana from Cosplay, and today we are setting a new speed crafting record. So for the release of Diablo 4, Blizzard asked me to create something cool. And the only problem though is that summer is always a little bit busy for us, and I would literally have only 2 weeks to create it. And I still wanted to create something with armor, still wanted to get a really cool weapon, and still look really epic. So I actually picked the Necromancer from Diablo 4 because the class is actually really fun to play and looks awesome. It has all the cool armor sets and everything, and you basically run around and summon skeletons all around you and create an epic army that destroys everything around you. Really cool. And yeah, in general I already played Diablo during the beta, and I got the ultimate edition, so I'm playing the whole time, and it's super duper fun, and it's really awesome. And yeah, if you want to check out the game, click on the link in the video description. And now the question is, did I finish the costume really in 2 weeks? Because obviously it's already done, otherwise I wouldn't make this video. And also, how many times did I roll on the ground and cried in the middle of the night? Let's figure this out and start crafting. So let's start with the reference. Blizzard sent me this amazing rendering of my favorite character and armor combination. It was actually based on their Necromancer reveal trailer, but I asked them to do some adjustments for my own costume. No idea if I can pull off this emo look at the end though. Anyway, let's start crafting. First part of the costume, the leather top. As you already know, every costume begins with some fun plastic wrap and duct tape. Benny obviously had to help me here. Once done, we drew on the general shape, cut everything out, and then got these wonderful pattern pieces. Next, I traced everything to cheap cotton fabric. This way, I was able to sew a dummy first and check if everything would actually work out. Looked pretty good though, what do you think? So the next step was to trace everything to some awesome faux leather that I found in a local shop. I pretty much just repeated all steps here, except that this material is actually far trickier to sew. Definitely recommend to use a Teflon or a walking foot here, by the way. As you can see, I first got all 4 individual pieces right and connected all of them afterwards. To close the top of the bag, I grabbed some plastic boning for corsets, glued it into the fabric, and secured it down with a further seam. This is actually the standard technique I use for plenty of leather tops, and it always works out pretty well. So far for the top, looks good. Now to the belt and pants. This was my favorite part of the costume, by the way. I began again with some cheap cotton fabric to get the patterns right. I still struggle a lot with sewing, but this way I can test and adjust shapes very fast and easy. My fabric of choice this time was this brown curtain fabric I also found in a local shop. Once I got my patterns right, I only had to trace all shapes onto the final material, cut everything out, and finish the edges. The costume was supposed to look old and dirty, so I already started with some weathering here and there. For the golden details, I used some fabric I still had laying around in one of my boxes. I'm actually a crazy fabric hoarder, and last minute projects like these only enforce my weird material collection addiction. Oh, and fabric weights, they are awesome as well. Loincloth done. Then some extra battle damage for the fabric part, and I had to cut out the belt next. I always give this piece some additional enforcement and then just finish everything with a ton of fabric glue and sewing clips. Especially here, a walking foot is really sweet, by the way. The belt was then closed with some simple Velcro strips. Finally, I only had to sew on the curtains and the belt part was done. For the shoes, I bought a cool looking pair online, and Benny made them look really used and old with simple black acrylics. It's like magic, what a difference! Okay, now it gets weird. This was my fabric for the chain mail pants. Yes, I know there are tons of better ways to create chainmail, but there was literally no time for any of them. So I just sewed some crochet leggings, dyed them, the only time I use my kitchen by the way, and covered them with additional acrylic paint. Yes, I did it, and I'm proud of these chainmail pants. Look pretty convincing from a bit further away, right? Now onto the bottom armor. Oh my, I was so excited, especially for this part. To speed things up, Benny gave me a huge boost by creating a 3D model in Blender. As you can see, we have a 3D scan of myself, and this is super handy. This way we got some perfect patterns which were then printed and cut out. I then only had to trace all shapes and got this wonderful foam puzzle at the end. Oh, and before you ask, I used here 5mm high density foam. I get all of my supplies from Cosplay Shop BE, by the way. They are super awesome. And as you can see, it was mostly just a lot of gluing and shaping. Then a foam dowel on top and cutting out a ton of foam pieces for all the details. But the base looked already pretty sweet, I would say. This specific knee armor consisted out of 3 pieces, and all of them required quite some fancy details. It's a pretty massive piece, and I was super excited to put everything together. To maintain the movability of my leg, I actually decided to connect them with fabric later. Duct tape did a good temporary job though. To speed up priming and painting as well, I grabbed black acrylic paint and mixed it with Flex Bond. Then I began applying a few thick layers, and as you can see, this armor won't require any base paint anymore. Yay! Now a really cool trick to create texture and details is actually artist gel. It creates a super rough surface just by dabbing it on. I smoothed it out a bit with a final layer of Flex Bond afterwards though. And then silver Robin buff. Any metallic wax paint should do the job though. I only had to apply it super careful with a piece of fabric, and this was the result. Super awesome, right? Finally, I added some dirt with brown oil paint, just a little bit here and there. And these were all 3 finished knee armor pieces. Now you surely wonder how I am going to attach them though, right? So here I glued on a piece of foam with fabric glue onto the belt, sewed it on, glued on Velcro too, sewed it on as well, and then connected everything with contact cement onto the foam. And yes, this one actually perfectly stays and is actually also still easy to loosen for adjustments. Just love the solution. Well, and now onto the hip armor. This one will be pretty cool as well. Again, Benny gave me a speed buff with his amazing Blender skills and our printer. And as you can see, making armor paper dummies is super helpful as well. Doing them gives me a huge confidence boost in my project, and I still can do fast adjustments if necessary. Now onto the foam. Since you got to see this stuff already though, I think I'll speed things up a little bit here. These were pretty much all parts for the hip armor, and while I still had to adjust things a little bit here and there, Benny's patterns were incredibly helpful to build actually all armor pieces in just one day. I still checked if all parts worked out, sanded then the edges a bit, and added all the details in 2mm foam. Those parts are not a big deal, but as you can see, they make armor pieces so much more interesting. Now on to the priming. Some final acrylic gel dabbing and a shiny wax paint. Benny 3D printed me then a few simple buckles and painted them golden. I actually needed them to finish the leather strips for the belt armor. These were some cool details, but I had so little time that I only glued them on and hoped this would be enough. This costume really depends on the strength of my fabric glue, and I pray to the cosplay gods that I will never ever run out of this wonderful product. But as you can see, everything worked out great and my belt armor was done. Velcro is great, Velcro is awesome, and Velcro makes me happy. Last but not least, Wilson, my little skull companion. Benny again made me a wonderful 3D model in Blender. You should really consider learning this program, by the way. It's really useful for cosplay, just saying. Well, anyway, I tested again a paper dummy first, and then Benny printed Wilson on one of our 3D printers. He chose actually the lowest resolution, and the print still took 20 hours. No time for any higher quality. No time at all. So he had to do quite some filling and fixing and sanding, and the result was still pretty rough. Meanwhile, I prepared a fake wooden stick, drilled a huge hole into the 3D print, and connected both with a good amount of hot glue. Then I fulfilled Wilson's biggest desire. He always wanted to be a unicorn. Isn't he super cute? I covered him up with 3 layers of Flex Bond and acrylic gel. Finally, Benny could begin with the paint job. He used here Vallejo airbrush colors, and I think now you can see all the texture I added previously. And sealing the whole paint job with a layer of spray varnish. This is super important for the next step, oil washing. Using simple brown oil paint, Benny could now wipe off all the excess paint without damaging the colors underneath. Once done, Wilson got a final layer of matte spray varnish. And a few decorative leather belts later, he looked so cute. Totally love how he turned out. Go go Wilson! Well, and this was then the complete bottom part of my Necromancer costume. It took quite some work, even though I tried to finish everything in just a few days. Next, the cute little Pauldrons. Another speed buff, and I had to cut out some foam. Once glued together, this was the base. Looked good on the dress form, so let's make some details. For this part, I had to sculpt a skull on top. I grabbed some black foam clay, applied some water, and basically just added a few clay sausages on top. Foam clay requires actually quite some practice to get used to, and I'm not a pro as well. Literally the only thing I can sculpt are skulls, don't judge me. So, what do you say? Cute or creepy? Anyway, you already know the next steps, right? 3 layers of Flex Bond and acrylic gel dabbing. And did I already mention how much I love rub and buff? Afterwards, I covered up the edges with painter's tape and got a great pattern I could trace onto faux leather. My corgi Zelda, meanwhile, made sure I didn't mess anything up. Then I had to cut out the result, covered my foam with contact cement, and glued the fabric onto my armor piece. The rivets are a nice extra detail, and I wish I had this idea a little bit earlier to add more of them to my costume. Oh, and here are also some upper arm guards I made. As you can see, I used rubber bands inside to hold them together, but still keep them flexible. All those parts were connected with just a ton of hot glue. The attachment worked also pretty much the same way as on my knee armor. Just some belts with sewed on Velcro. And here's the result. Holds up pretty well and looks fancy too. The pendant was made by Benny as well. He grabbed some screenshots and basically rebuilt it in 3D. For printing, he used our Anycubic resin machine. It's very reliable and the final prints barely need any sanding. Perfect if you're under time pressure as we were. Afterwards, he used the black base coat for painting and covered the whole thing in golden spray paint. And with some weathering and details, this was the result. Totally love it. Finally, Benny decided to go over the whole costume with more acrylics and make it more weathered. He basically just darkened the edges and seams. As you can see though, this makes a huge difference. Now onto the very last part of the costume, the crown. I'm pretty sure by now you are fully convinced to learn Blender. So check out Benny's tutorial videos on our channel. With this speed boost, I actually wanted to get a new crafting record. So I cut out all patterns, taped them together, traced them to 5mm EVA foam, cut everything out as well, glued more stuff, and got my base. Still pretty wobbly though, right? So this time I grabbed another material called wobbler. I cut out 2 pieces of the rough shape of my crown and
and heated up the material by heat gun dual wielding. Then I placed my foam crown on top and covered it from both sides with wobbler. It can be shaped and easily cut by applying heat and will be quite durable and sturdy once it cools down again. So the key was to keep just the right temperature while working with it and carefully shape the crown step by step. With some practice, the material is actually really awesome, and as you can see, I was able to finish the build of my crown quite fast. Finally, it was time for priming, acrylic gel brushing, and rub and buff painting. And this was the result. The whole piece took me only 3 hours. Finally, I grabbed one of my 6 random silver wigs, which I kept hoarding over the years, and there was the wig and the crown. Now onto the very last part of this project, the Necromancer Scythe. Instead of Blender, Benny used Adobe Illustrator here to create a blueprint. I always need these drawings to get a basic idea of the shape and size of the weapon and all details, and especially how I'm going to build it. Then Benny printed out the result, I taped all pages together and got another paper dummy. For the base, I plan to use a few PVC pipes in different thicknesses. Just had to cut them into the right length. So the plan was actually to separate the weapon into 3 individual pieces. This makes storage, transportation, but also building and painting everything far less complicated. Everything worked just with a few holes, magnets and super glue. Check out my YouTube video if you're curious about how to separate props. As you can see, I separated everything into 3 main sections of the weapon. Just had to grab another pipe for extra stability within the blade, heat it carefully up, bring it into shape and glue it into the top PVC pipe piece. Now let's finally start with the foam crafting. First, I needed a box for the top. I usually try to find simple geometric shapes within a design and just build up the whole weapon piece by piece. This part was a little bit more tricky though, but once done I had already a great base for the whole blade. As I mentioned, the weapon was actually the very last part of the whole cosplay and I was running out of time. Therefore, everything was a little bit more rushed and messy than usual, but I still tried my best to stay as close as possible to the reference. While the weapon had indeed quite a lot of details, it was luckily a simple design. Like, there were no crazy light effects, no endless drying times for silicone, resin or clay, and no extensive 3D printing was necessary. I was able to build everything straightforward, just with some simple foam, and could finish everything mostly just with contact cement, a cutter and a Dremel. I also have to mention that I have quite some experience doing this kind of stuff. I cosplay already since 2003, and while no project is just like the other, it is always a new adventure. Having some finished projects in the pocket clearly helps to become faster, more confident and do fewer mistakes. So if you struggle yourself, just keep in mind that failing is part of the journey. Everyone starts small, and so I did with my early expanding foam and paper mache projects. Anyway, I rushed like crazy and was super proud that I was able to finish the whole foam build in around 12 hours. As you can see, the separation of my PVC pipes worked out great as well and no seams were visible. Super proud. And here are all 3 parts again. Time to cuddle Midna a bit. Well, and by now you surely know all the missing steps. Priming, textures, and more priming. I was so excited to give the weapon its final shiny look. This was so much fun. As you might notice, I actually kept the blade smooth, so it looks like it's really sharp and shiny. Then Benny made it a little bit more dirty and old, and here is the finished blade of the Scythe. Nice! He also helped me to paint the rest of the weapon, while I meanwhile began with weaving the grip. This technique looks super messy and chaotic at the beginning, but it's a really nice detail once done. Just had to finish off the ends properly, connect the weapon again, and Benny gave it some shadows at the end. And these were the other 2 pieces. Not bad for such a fast crafting job. In total, Benny and I were able to finish the whole prop in less than 24 hours. absolutely love how it turned out and super proud of our speed. Well, and this was it with all the cutting, gluing and painting. Now it was finally time to get dressed up. I tried to apply a spooky but still pretty makeup and was super happy with the wig as well. The crown and top worked out nicely. And yes, this is actually the very first fitting test. I had no time for one before and just hoped I did everything right. The costume turned out super comfy by the way and is really lightweight. Velcro is the way. Oh, and this is actually the first time you see my braces, right? By now I'm pretty sure you know how I made them though. Sorry I didn't film them at all. Benny then hand drew me some spooky necromancer runes all around my belly and my arm. Well, and here is my finished necromancer costume from Diablo 4. How do you like it? We actually did 2 cool photo shoots, but more on this in another video. However, here is one of the final photos as a little teaser. So happy with the costume and super proud of the final result.
Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video and like the final costume. I'm super proud of it and I'm really happy that we really made it in time, even though we had quite a few tiny little bit mental breakdowns. And yeah, but I also hope you were able to find some helpful tips and tricks for your very own cosplay project. And if you need even more help, check out my books on comicosplay.com. I have a specific one just for foam armor making and also one for foam prop making on comicosplay.com. Thank you very much for support. And yeah, also if you have any questions, please leave me a comment down below. And also let me know how you like the new workshop, because we have a new one if you maybe noticed it. And if you don't know what to write, please just write down Corgi and join the Corgi squad and support us with the YouTube algorithm. And yeah, finally, thanks so much to Blizzard for this absolutely amazing collaboration. It was pure joy to bring the Necromancer to life. I'm super proud of it. And as said, Diablo 4 turned out amazing. It's so fun. So if you're curious, check out the game in the link in the video description down below. And finally, as always, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And I promise you there will be a lot of videos coming in the near future. So see you in the next video. Bye bye. And last but not least, thanks so much to all our Patreons for supporting our channel. And sorry I didn't mention our super Patreons in the very last video because we were busy with the move. So thank you very much for /cosplay and /cosplay, because I mentioned you twice, Luisa Paris and Even Makes. Thank you very much. And also thank you very much to all our other Patreons for supporting us on this crazy adventure. Bye bye!